Well, today we are meeting in a very uncomfortable place. America is in a bad spot, and this is just one metric we can measure that with. This is reality. This is consequence. This is the writing on the wall. Just for fun, this week I've skimmed through a couple of old presidential debates just to see what the major topics of discussion were. In 2008, the main question, the question they started out with was what kind of financial recovery plan would each candidate come up with to help save the economy? And then they even went further and asked how each candidate would pay for it and what sacrifices they were willing to make to pay for their plan. McCain kept using terms like pork barrel spending, tax cuts, and directed people to check out the Citizens Against Government Waste website. Even Obama sounded reasonable, even though we know what happened under his dictatorship in the end. I also watched a bit of the 1996 presidential debate, and again, the economy, government spending, those were the top topics. And again, Clinton sounded reasonable. He actually sounded very competent in comparison to Bob Dole. He stressed the importance of keeping the deficit low because, he said, a high deficit leads to inflation and then higher interest rates, which leads to higher mortgages and car payments, and on and on and on the list of damages goes. Even if he was just paying lip service, at least he understood the concept. It seems that everybody had an innate understanding that out-of-control spending was detrimental to the nation, and a president would have to balance trying to get their agenda done, but also not getting us into astronomical amounts of debt. These days, talks of the budget are nothing more than stale old, tired, uniquely Republican talking points that don't resonate with people in the slightest. When I was listening to Bob Dole talk, it had me squirming in my seat, just thinking that if anybody talked that way now in a debate, they would be defenestrated right then and there. He seemed so old, so out of touch, politically untenable. He wasn't the 90s, he was some sort of anachronistic dinosaur. Now more than ever, there is public demand to have the government do something, even though the government is more unqualified to do that than ever before. On an ever-increasing amount of issues, America just gives up on trying to be reasonable. We just accept the status quo and we go on living under the consequences of our inactions for decades, and we try to adjust to the new conditions. At a certain point, America just stopped caring about the budget. The money seems fake. The numbers seem fake. The deficit became too big to fix, and our politicians aren't interested in solving it because they were the ones who added to it. Remember when healthcare was a huge issue? Obamacare came in and destroyed the market, and everybody's rates went up by so much. They lost their doctors and were suddenly forced to have health insurance. Republicans ran on repealing that. Then it became about repeal and replace. And that became so unworkable that the best Trump could do was end the mandate. But ever since Obamacare, people's health insurance goes up every year. And every year, for most people, the coverage gets worse. 1/3 of all the GoFundMes are for healthcare costs because the system we live under is broken. But we've moved on from that. Nobody cares about that anymore. Like an alcoholic, we grow a tolerance to the poison that we inject into our body. Our system that keeps us alive. Immigration, civil rights, gay rights, forced integration, even the possibility of election fraud, you name it. It was once the most hot button issue, and now it's off limits to talk about, and we just live under the consequences of never addressing those problems. Take immigration. We're facing possible food shortages, while also allowing almost 250,000 people a month into America from the southern border. Will that be a hot button topic in the next election? Will anybody say enough is enough? We need to just stop immigration completely for the next 10 years and deport tons of people? Of course not. It can't even be considered. I'm sure a huge number of Republicans right now would support some kind of amnesty bill if it was presented to them. We've become a nation that sticks its head in the sand and ignores its problems rather than deal with them. We have a serious literacy problem. We've got a real bad math problem, a real bad history problem. We have a Zoomer population that's so dumb, it's going to cripple us as a nation. But we never addressed education. Public schools are not where kids go to learn. Public schools are basically daycares for parents that have to work 2 jobs in order to survive, with a little state indoctrination thrown in there. Will any Republican come out and excoriate feminism for abandoning children and the ruination of our society? Of course not. We just ignore it and live with the problem, and we're proud of our female candidates. America is a death by 1,000 cuts, 1,000 little problems that have all added up to the collapse of our society. We could look at 1,000 different vectors. Things like the 1964 Civil Rights Act or the 1965 Immigration Act. Things like the 17th Amendment to the Constitution, which allowed senators to be elected by the people instead of by the states, reducing the amount of state power. These have all transformed America drastically, and they're all outside of the Overton window of ideas that can be criticized and reversed. We moved on, and we currently live under the punishment. In that 1996 debate, Clinton was proud of the V-chip, a device placed in all TVs that allowed parents to filter what their kid was allowed to watch by the ratings of the shows. Try running on a platform that limits what kids are allowed to see. It's unthinkable. We just abandoned that idea and are currently living with the punishment. And the punishment is, now you have a party that is constantly trying to increase what they can see. They look at the Buzz Lightyear movie. Like they want to add more and more inappropriate stuff. Not only has it stopped, but it's reverse course in their direction, As Aaron McIntyre puts it, leftism is like a ratchet that only moves in one direction, and is never allowed to move backwards. Another way I've heard it is in the Distributus video, A Gentle Introduction to Mencius Moldbug, is that, conservatives today are much more left than their predecessors, with each generation of conservative being much more liberalized or used to swimming in the waters of leftism than the generation before them. You'll hear it, as Cthulhu only swims left. I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here. I'm aware of that. But seeing this national debt clock really put things into perspective. We have failed, and it would take 5 generations of reactionary right-wing leadership to ever correct the course. And America just doesn't have the resolve to do that. We had 8 years of Reagan, and then 4 years of Bush Sr., so of course we were tired of that, and we had to elect a Democrat for 8 years to try and balance that out. Then we had Bush Jr. for 8 years, and people got tired of him. So then we had to have Obama for 8 years to balance out Bush. And then we got tired of Obama, so we barely got Trump in there. And then we basically made a deal with the left that if we would elect sweet old Grandpa Joe, then they would stop burning our cities to the ground and throw in another 4-year-long hissy fit. Well, now people are tired of Joe, and the pendulum will just keep swinging back and forth, never allowing the one side power for long enough to do what's necessary. And we're paying the price for that right now. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video and type of content, consider giving this video a like, maybe subscribing. I will see you all in the next video. Peace.